Okay, so I'm Alex, and I work with Wendy, Jyoti, and Sean at QCP's Development Department, and we've been hosting this meeting since March 2020. Jyoti, can you manage that one? Okay. Steve Karp, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Steve Karp, Variable Promotions. We are a 70 or so year old full service commercial printer, as well as a distributor of promotional items. Thank you.
It's almost 71 years old now, right? Since you've joined the group.
I think it's actually about 75 years, but
okay. We're keeping count. John Rafferty.
Good morning, everyone. John Rafferty from WatchGuard 24/7. I'm the owner of a full-service security guard company, so we provide security guards, concierges, and fire safety directors to residential and commercial markets throughout New York and New Jersey.
Thank you. And Pat Kulas, welcome to the group. I don't know whether you've been to the group before, but just—
No, the first time with this group. All the other groups, though. I'm Pat Kulas. I'm a member of the board of directors, and my daughter goes to QCP for almost 40 years. Don't tell me that.
Wow.
Close to.
Jyoti?
Good morning. My name is Jyoti. I'm the development assistant here at QCP, working with Alex, Wendy, and Sean. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Farrell.
Thanks. Good morning, folks. Tom Farrell. I have a business law practice in Fresh Meadows, Queens, covering Brooklyn, Queens, and Nassau. I have an expertise in contracts, regulatory matters, and the employment matters that touch on both of those. My practice is directed exclusively to the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean. I'm the Development Associate at Queens Centers for Progress. I work with Wendy, Alex, and Jyoti in the Development Department, helping raise funds for our programs.
Thank you. Ben Horowitz.
Hey, good morning. Benjamin Hart, CEO of BSB Consultants. We specialize in group health insurance for organizations as small as 2 employees up to a couple thousand.
Thank you. Maxine, welcome back. You're muted, Maxine.
Hi, good morning. I'm Maxine Alexander. I live in Brooklyn, but I'm delighted to be a part of this group and to be back. I'm a visual artist. I specialize in developing programs for the Caribbean American community.
Thank you. We don't discriminate against Brooklyn. You're always welcome.
Okay, great.
Robert.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Talking about Brooklyn, I actually live in Brooklyn now, but I grew up in Forest Hills, Queens. Yay, Forest Hills. My name is Robert. I work in social services. I also have my real estate broker's license, and I'm trying to do a little bit of both because coming out of the pandemic, as everyone knows, it's going to be a free-for-all out there. So I'm watching the market very closely to see where things are starting to reignite, basically.
Thank you. Jerry Schwartz.
Good morning, all. Jerry Schwartz, Jerry the Geek, for all your computer needs. I do computer repair and support for small businesses and homeowners throughout Long Island and Queens, either in person or virtually.
Thank you. Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Good morning, Alex. Good morning, everyone. Nancy Vargas, CEO of DH2 Chauffeur Transportation. What we do is provide safe and private ground transportation services, as well as mobile detailing service. Thank you.
And towards the end of the program, I'll ask you to talk a little bit about the August date that we just sent out a notice to the members.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Sure. Mara?
Hey, good morning, guys. Mara Ohanyan, Cruise Planners, your essential travel advisor. I have a full-service travel agency, land, cruises, individual, groups, anything. And I also am a personal assistant to Nancy Vargas. No, I'm just kidding. But the more I book, the more I will send to the airport. So, you know.
Gotcha.
Hi, Jaseni.
Good morning. Thank you, Alex. My name is José Tineo. I am the president at José Michel Events. What we do is that we are event planners. We help our clients with full event planning. We help them save time and money because we know the best wedding professionals or event professionals. And we also help them just bring their vision to life by creating the most creative design, as well as coordination, so they can enjoy their own party and be a guest.
Thank you. And finally, Neil.
Good morning, everybody. Neil Levin, Webline Media Group. At Webline, we've been designing websites since 1995. Together with my partner, Steve, I've worked on over 1,000 projects from small companies up to publicly traded companies. And we also do online marketing, Google ad campaigns, LinkedIn ad campaigns, etc. Neil Levin, Webline Media Group. Good morning.
So when you started, they were coding HTML with hammer and chisel, right? In stone tablets.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I was there.
Okay. You were there. Okay, so Jackie Harunian is going to be talking to us today first, and then we're going to have a stop-by visit from Rob McKay of the QEDC. So Jackie, I'm going to spotlight you and take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I've attended your meetings before, so I see some familiar faces and some new ones. For those that don't know me, I'm Jackie Harunian. I'm a partner in one of the largest family law firms in the New York area. We have 10 attorneys doing mediation and out-of-court settlements, and also the courts just opened up, so litigation as well. I love doing presentations on family law. It's almost always an interesting discussion because family law really comes down to relationships and how the culture of our society is changing, the decisions that young people are making about getting married or not, how they start their families. And at the end, I'm going to talk to you about fertility law and some cutting edge issues in family law. But family law really comes down to divorce matters and breakups and painful endings to relationships. And so I do have a PowerPoint, which I'm going to share. And I'm hoping it'll be interactive, so I might ask some questions. Maybe you can join me in the comments and give me some of your opinions or answers to questions. And I'm happy to answer questions at the end or privately, because obviously some of these things are not appropriate to share publicly. So here's my PowerPoint. I'm putting it up right now. And what people are always surprised to learn in family law is how many changes have occurred as recently as the past 10 years. As a matter of fact, unless you've been through a divorce or know someone that has gone through the court system, a lot of what you think you know about the laws of New York and about mediation and litigation in general are probably out of date. And that is one of the most important reasons why I do these presentations, because expectations of clients don't always match reality. And that's something that married people need to know, because sometimes it seems like the grass is greener and you think getting divorced might be in your interests, when really maybe you need to work on your marriage. And I am someone who believes in marriage. I'm quite traditional myself. I'm married a very long time and I have 4 children. And at the same time, our society is opening up. And as I mentioned, younger generations are not necessarily on the same page as all of us. And no disrespect to anyone, but we're the crowd that's here today is really probably parents and grandparents, maybe people a little bit younger than that. And I can guarantee you your children and grandchildren are probably looking at marriage a little bit differently than maybe you did. So this is my bio. I have been practicing matrimonial law for more than 25 years, and I also have a degree in psychology. And it comes in very handy to understand psychology when you're working with couples as a mediator or an attorney. Because if you understand the psychology in the relationship and the reason for the breakdown, you're just going to be a better advocate. Because again, the goal is to try to keep people out of court. So this slide shows the main reason why marriage is changing and relationships are changing. And there are really, the problem is women. Women are marrying later. They're choosing to get educated and have careers before they get married. And it's creating different reasons for why people get together and stay together. And women do not have to stay in abusive relationships anymore. They don't have to stay in relationships where they don't have access to income and assets. They can go get their own income and assets. So whether you like it or not, whatever your personal beliefs are and values are, this is the reason why it's changing, not only in the United States, but around the world. And you can see a lot of it has to do with later ages for marriage for women and men. And as I mentioned here on this slide, Women have more options, but also men have more options. So as I'm going to talk about a little bit more, men today that are fathers are much more active in raising their children. They are doing homework, they're doing pickup and drop-offs from daycare, they're coaching teams, they're much more involved. And technology has made it easier for young people to stay in touch with their parents. And so in my practice, that has been a game changer, the role of fathers with their families. And a lot of the stigma of the Mr. Mom has gone away. Fathers can say very proudly, I'm active in raising my children. I have joint custody. Some fathers are even getting sole custody. I'm going to talk about that too. So this slide shows some major social trends over the past 10 to 15 years. And these are the reasons why the laws have changed. And I'm going to tell you about the changes in family law, but for lots of reasons, because people are getting married later in life, marriage has become optional. Cohabitation is a very big trend. Young people are deciding to become single parents, and the stigma of divorce is going away. A lot of it has to do with grounds for divorce, as I'm going to mention. So all of this is sort of coming out of the closet, so to speak. All of the stigma, all of the shame of getting divorced. I mentioned here on the slide about gray divorce, which means older couples are not feeling stigmatized about seeking a divorce or a separation. Women breadwinners, blended families, and joint custody have really become the starting point, the starting paradigm for almost every divorcing family. Prenups and postnups are the closest thing to divorce insurance. Young people, millennials, love prenups. I can talk an hour about that alone. I'm going to brag and tell you, I was just quoted in the Wall Street Journal on this topic. Why do young people like prenups? Because they're marrying later, they have assets to protect, and they have much more of an equality, egalitarian view of their relationships, because almost always we're talking about a couple that has more education and more money, and so they don't feel that stigma about signing a financial agreement. Before a divorce, and for all kinds of reasons, for second marriages, for older couples, prenups are fantastic. It's the best way to find out who the person you're walking down the aisle with really is. Do they have assets or debts? Shouldn't you know about it before you get married? I would definitely say yes. And most financial advisors agree with that it's good to have a prenup or a financial agreement, or a postnup, which is the exact same thing. You're just signing it after. So here's what I'm going to ask all of you to help me a little bit. Huge changes in family law. What are the changes? I wonder if in the comments, in the chat, you can share what you think over the past 10 years, what the changes are. Can you make a guess what the actual legislation is and how it's changed? Please add it to the chat, and let's see if you get it right. So I'm going to give you a minute, not more than that, because I know we have the time clock is running. Do you know what the changes are? Do you know what the actual changes in the laws are? Make a comment, and I'm going to start with the first change, and it's probably the biggest change, and that is no fault divorce. No fault divorce has changed everything, because no fault divorce means that there are no more grounds for adultery. There's no more grounds for cruelty. All of those religious, moral-based grounds that used to keep people married because they didn't want the negativity and the shame and the stigma. They didn't want their church or synagogue weighing in. They didn't want the feeling that they failed on a moral basis or betrayed their vows. Those grounds are still available in New York. But I'm telling you, in a high volume practice that we have, no one uses them anymore. Virtually every divorce goes through no fault. So I wonder how many of you really guessed that right. I'm sorry, I can't really see the chat, so I'm just going to keep talking. The next major change in divorce is joint custody laws. The laws of custody have become completely gender neutral. And that's a very big deal because as recently as 10 years ago, custody laws were based on a maternal preference. It actually said in the law that if you're a mom, you have more rights than a dad. And that's a pretty big change, because gender neutral means that joint custody is the starting point. Joint custody doesn't mean 50-50 parenting, although that's a big trend too. Joint custody means that both parents have legal rights. They have the right to make financial decisions. They have the right to talk to the doctors. This idea of sole custody, which really favored moms in a very, very big way, that's gone. No more maternal presumption. And as I said before, that's really amazing for fathers. The next huge change is gender neutral support laws. Another big change, because when you have gender neutral support laws, suddenly you have much fairer outcomes. And obviously the issue of custody and support are very interrelated. A lot of moms want custody because that means they get child support. A lot of fathers want custody because they don't want to pay child support. But guess what? Moms now pay child support. Moms now pay spousal support. Boy, they hate that. You think fathers don't like to pay alimony? Mothers really don't like to.
Jackie, you went silent.
Looks like she froze.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Jackie, you back?
Can you hear me?
Now we can. You
Okay,
froze
good.
there for a moment.
All right, good. Thanks for telling me. So about a third of the women that walk into my office earn the same as their spouse, or they earn more than their spouse. And that is a huge change in the law. I can't see the chat. So Alex, maybe you can tell me if there are any other guesses that people made. So I talked about no fault divorce.
There's a mention about same-sex couples.
Yes, yes. So this is part of the gender neutral thing. Judges no longer on a constitutional basis can favor moms versus dads, because now we have same-sex marriages and we have same-sex divorces, and you have couples that are cohabiting, and that makes a lot of, it has a really big impact about assets that are shared, because the one difference between getting married or living together is the sharing of assets. If you are living with someone and your name is not on the house, you're not entitled to a share of that house. If you're not married, you're not going to get a share of the retirement assets. So there is a risk to young people that don't get married. And oftentimes the risk is to the young woman who didn't get married, had children, stayed home with the children, and then 15 years later, she gets dumped. She's not going to get the house, not going to get the pension, not going to get spousal support. So that's a little bit of a red flag for young women, for men too. If you live with someone who earns more and the assets are in the name of that person, that is still a problem. And it can be addressed in a financial agreement. And people have to know the risks when they take those relationships. The courts, this is another big change, are no longer favoring women, protecting women in the way as before. Again, a lot of the judges are women, by the way. The judges are working women, obviously. They're educated. They no longer have that protective role in protecting women who made mistakes by living in a marriage with someone and didn't further their own education or really became too dependent financially. So the messaging in the court system is pretty strong at this point. It's sort of caveat emptor. It's gender neutral. It's if you make decisions or sign joint tax returns, you better know what you're doing, because later on, the court system is not going to protect you. And innocent spouse protection for tax returns is slowly disappearing. We used to hear it all the time, and I'm practicing a very long time. I used to use innocent spouse defense for women because their husband had a cash business, or because there were tax debts and liens, and she had no idea because she never looked at the tax returns. Well, today, that is not an excuse. The judge will look at the woman, at the man, square in the face and say, you should have looked at your tax returns. If you e-filed, you should have spoken to the accountant. The risk is on you. Don't come to divorce court and start complaining about a cash business. That's on you. And some judges actually report to the IRS too. So there's some pretty well-known situations. And as lawyers, we have to protect our clients for that. So in a situation like that, I'm going to really encourage settling out of court, because the risk is just too high that you'll get a judge that's going to report to the IRS. That happens all the time now. Let me see what's next on my PowerPoint. 1 second. Sorry, Alex, I'm trying to find it here. Here it is. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of you now, I can talk more about changes in family law regarding payment of legal fees. Can anyone guess? You can speak up and tell me what you think happens now with legal fees. The old law used to be that the moneyed spouse paid the legal fees. Can anyone take a guess of what they think the new laws are regarding who pays legal fees in a divorce case?
No idea.
50-50.
I'm going to give you a hint. Yes, Pat, the laws are more fair. It's not quite 50-50. The moneyed spouse still does have to make a contribution. It might be $5,000 or $10,000, which is not nearly enough if a case is in court. I'm just throwing that out as a ballpark number. What's happening with legal fees, and this started again about 10 years ago, is the concept of skin in the game. Judges love that expression, skin in the game. A wife or a lower earning spouse has to contribute to her own legal fees. And you're not going to really get a blank check to litigate endlessly and hand the bills to your ex anymore. Skin in the game means that counsel fees might come out of assets. It might come out of, the equity in a home. You might end up running up a big tab with your lawyer, and you're going to end up being responsible for it. So by and large, and a lot of it does have to come with the fact that I represent fathers, and I always have as much as mothers, the laws are really much, much more fair overall. So here I have a list of a lot of what I spoke to you about, what the changes in the laws are. I'm sure a lot of you could guess. And Alex, if you want, we can share this PowerPoint. If someone is not taking notes, I'm happy to share it with anyone who asks. The one thing I want to mention also, super interesting, licenses and degrees are no longer marital property. Big, big change. It used to be the cliche case. The nurse marries the doctor. She gives up her career. His medical degree, his license, his practice, all marital property. She gets 50% of that. That's the old law. Under the new law, the license is off the table altogether. Doesn't matter if she put him through school. Doesn't matter if they have debts and she paid them. The license is off the table. The degree is off the table. The practice is still on the table if it's a lucrative practice. But does anyone think she gets 50% of the practice? Raise your hand if you think she gets 50%. No, she gets 10%, 15%. The nurse, the stay-at-home mom who put her husband through medical school gets royally screwed. She really does. She gets almost nothing from the practice. She might get some spousal support.
Jackie?
Yeah.
Does it matter if the degree was acquired after the wedding, after the marriage started?
Doesn't matter at all. No.
What's the reasoning behind that?
The reasoning is the earning spouse, the spouse that hustled during the marriage, the spouse that went out and earned, gets to walk away with the fruits of their labor. And the spouse that stays home takes that risk. You better hope your marriage lasts. If you put your spouse, and again, by the way, more educated spouses these days are the women. So listen, this is definitely the gender neutral thing. If you stay home with your children as a Mr. Mom, and believe me, I meet those men every day. There are a lot of men that are really doing a lot of childcare. They are making dinner. They are running the home while their spouse is out there. But the concept is if you earn, if you studied, if you hustled, you get to walk away with that. You still have to pay child support. Those laws have not changed at all. You still have to pay some spousal support, but the degree, the license, and the business, it's now yours. You pay very little, 10, I've seen 5%, I've seen 0. The wives, the stay-at-home that gets 30% or 40% of the business, that's the wife that was the office manager of the business, or she really was a part of the business in a very active way. She made direct contributions. So remember when I started out saying family law has changed and it's the expectations versus the reality? This is what I mean. Imagine how many, I hate to say it, it's women mostly, are going to lawyers that are promising them the sun and the moon and your legal fees too. They're going to get hurt, and they are getting hurt because the outcomes in court are not pretty. And it's the lawyers that tell the truth from the beginning, that set expectations. You could still litigate. You could still take an aggressive stance, and I do. And some people should, because that's the way to get the best outcome. But don't cry if things don't go your way. How much more time do I have, Alex? Because I could keep talking.
Yeah, let's say wrap it up in about 5.
Okay. So This is a slide that talks a little bit about spousal support. Not going to have time to really go into it, just to say that spousal support is the issue that really gets people in trouble. It's the area where there's usually intense negotiations, and for business owners, for cash businesses, for LLCs or real estate partnerships, it's tricky. So you need to get really good advice and make a claim. And a lot of times it's the man making the claim. So, and it's not tax deductible anymore. That's a very big change in the law, and that's a Trump change. That's the new tax reform of 2017. Spousal support is no longer tax deductible. And the duration is now defined as 1/2 to 1/3 the length of the marriage. So good lawyers, experienced lawyers can make much better predictions about spousal support than ever before, because the law has been refined. So now here I have a slide that just talks about the different options for legal process in the state of New York. And this goes for any litigation. For those of you that are business owners, these are your options when it comes to legal process. Uncontested means you settle the case out of court. Mediation means you have two people, sometimes with lawyers, but often not, that go to a neutral mediator. You can also go to an arbitrator, but we don't really use arbitration in the state of New York for divorce, but there's a lot of mediation. It's a very big trend. You can go to court and litigate. It'll take a year or 2 years or up to 3 years. I've heard more in matrimonial cases. Most people are broke by that time. They're usually mentally ill by that time. Their children usually are in weekly therapy by that time, but there are people that litigate, that go all the way to trial, and it's about 5% of cases that go to trial. 95% of people either come to their senses, or they have prenups or postnups, or they just throw in the towel and they settle. And there are many people that will not settle until the trial starts. It's a psychology, it's a tactic, it's a negotiating style. And then for the really reckless are the appellate process. It's very hard to get an appeal, a reversal of a divorce court ruling, unless you can show the judge made a mistake. And not only a mistake, but a material mistake. It's got to be something substantial. Appeals are even more money out the window. We do them in my office, but I talk almost all clients out of doing it. There are ways to negotiate, file a notice of appeal and negotiate. We can do that too. But this is your range. This is your menu of options. I think you can all tell which way I lean. And it's important to know what the law is before you start a divorce process. This is my list of new frontiers. I'm not going to have any time to go into it, but you'll see it in the PowerPoint if it's emailed to you. There are so many new trends: cryptocurrency, hidden assets, IVF law, which is now going to be covered by insurance, thanks to Governor Cuomo. It's going to save marriages. It's going to grow families. It's really fair. I also have a little bit of a niche practice in religious divorce and international family law. I am bilingual. I speak Farsi. My parents are Middle Eastern immigrants. We have attorneys and staff here that speak Spanish and Portuguese. International disputes and religious divorce for Jews, Muslims, Catholics. It's a very big part of my practice. Wish I had time to talk to you about legal marijuana and how that's going to change custody. Boy, big issue. And vaccine disputes, pet and animal law, very big issue with millennials. A lot of them fight over their pets, cyber harassment, and digital assets. This is a picture of the lawyers of my firm. There's actually a couple that aren't in here because our firm has grown during the pandemic. But I've been a partner here for 15 years, and I'm actually going to be my managing partner by the end of the year. I'm very excited about that. And this is my contact information. Very easy to reach. I really love talking about this topic. So the ask I have for all of you, if there's an opportunity for me to give this presentation in your businesses, for your organizations, I really could talk a lot more about issues. I'm now going to take my screen share off. As I mentioned, I'm married. And I really believe in commitment and relationships and conflict-free relationships, whatever that means to you, especially if there's young children. And so the message I want to leave you with is that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships. I didn't author that quote. It's around out there, but it really is true. The people that live with you, your closest coworkers, they're going to affect how you function in this world. And so you have a role in reducing conflict in your relationships. And there are various ways that you can do that. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who has questions, either now or afterwards. Thank you, everyone.
Very nice.
Jackie, wonderful.
Thank you.
Questions for Jackie?
Yeah, I have a few actually.
Uh-oh.
Let's start with one. We have another presentation, so keep it limited to one this time.
Jackie, I'm gonna need to speak to you offline, but one
Sure.
question I have a whole bunch, but let me do one at a time, one quick one. How has the law changed for women who are victims of domestic violence, if at all?
There's a lot of changes. There's a question in the chat about estate planning. Yes, we do handle estate planning. We do estate planning litigation. Everyone listening should have a will. That's just, I think we've all learned that during the pandemic. They're very inexpensive and bring a lot of peace of mind. In New York State, there are so many protections for victims of domestic violence. I have a huge amount of experience in this area. And a lot of it has to do with my relationships with victim services agencies, because my firm offers a free consultation. I give away a lot of free time, and so do all of our attorneys. And a lot of it is to people that simply cannot afford an attorney. And that's part of the public service we do. We also run support groups, and we do a lot of education for individuals and businesses. Domestic violence is a huge problem. Because of the strong gun control rights in New York State, a lot of now the abilities that police have to remove weapons, a lot of laws now regarding cyber harassment to protect victims. But most of all, the change is that there's more of a willingness now because of the Me Too movement. I know it's controversial, but it did create an awareness that you have to believe victims. What has changed more for domestic violence victims is it's so much easier now to collect evidence regarding an abuser. Screenshots of threats, audio tapes, videotapes, surveillance. It's hard to hide abuse. It's easier than ever. And during the pandemic, a lot of abuse went behind closed doors. And now we know there's been an epidemic of domestic violence, and the agencies, and there are so many of them. If anyone needs referrals, I can give them to you. But they are very busy right now. Those hotlines are busy. And a lot of the victims are men too. It's not always women. There's a lot of fighting between teenagers that move back home with their families, or young people in their 20s. There's fighting between parents and children. So domestic violence can take on many different forms. And the courts consider domestic violence when they're making custody rulings. So a lot of the decisions to call the police, and really that's where it starts. If there's violence, you have to have it documented.
Okay, I put my email address in chat, so
Sure.
if we can speak offline, I'd appreciate it.
Anytime.
Ten
I'm
other
going to put my
questions,
email address too. I'm putting my email address in the chat right now in case anyone wants to talk. As I mentioned, we have a free consultation, and it's no problem at all to follow up after today. Any other questions?
There was a question about inheritance disputes and whether
Yeah.
your firm covers that.
Yeah, we do handle estate planning and inheritance disputes. Those are very common. A lot of overlap with family law. A lot of times it's siblings fighting. But the most proactive way to deal with inheritance disputes really is, as I mentioned before, conflict resolution, open communication in a family. It's never good to kind of bury things underground and wait till they blow up when it's too late. And inheritance disputes a lot of times are situations where families don't communicate well, and one party is either taking advantage or things are not put in writing. When a parent becomes elderly and is no longer able or have capacity, that's a very big problem. So if you have people in your life that are older or that need some help and have some assets to protect, you can't wait. You really do need to have powers of attorney in place. They're almost just as important as a will. You need to start divesting assets and moving money around so that maybe you can qualify for Medicaid in a few years. There's lots of reasons why it's a good idea to speak to an attorney regarding estate planning, and for all of you as well. Everyone here is very young, very vital. Hopefully we'll live many years, but I did my will in my 30s. I wanted to protect my children. I told my husband I don't want to ever get on a plane without knowing that my affairs are in order. Young parents should do guardianship agreements. Lots of things you can do. And again, estate planning is very inexpensive. It's not something to avoid. It actually will save tons of money and, more importantly, peace of mind. Robert, you asked for my contact information. I'm just sticking it, my phone number and my emails in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Okay, time for one more question, and then we go to Rob McKay. Go ahead, Nancy.
Jackie, so nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Nancy.
Great presentation, very valuable. Is your practice only in New York?
Yeah, we only do New York. We do have someone here that practices in New Jersey as well, but we can give referrals for other states. I mean, after doing this for so many years, I do have people that I refer to. I never give just one name. I try to give a few. But most New York lawyers, most New York law firms are only doing New York law. The pandemic has made it easy to do virtually. So now I have cases in Orange County. I have cases all the way. We can just we can handle almost any case anywhere in New York at this point. And I can do mediation in other places.
Thank you, Jackie.
Pleasure.
Okay. Jackie, thank you. I will make your presentation available. Just make sure if you would send me the latest version, because I think
I'm going to. I'll do that right now. Thank you.
Okay, and now, thank you very much, Jackie. I hope everybody got a lot out of that. I know that was fascinating. I'd be curious to hear what Joseni has to say about that, since her business is weddings. Let's go to Rob McKay now, and he is going to talk a little bit about his new book. Go ahead, Rob.
All right. Hi, everyone. Jackie, that was a tremendous presentation. I don't plan to get divorced, but should it happen, I would definitely come to you. Thank you, Alex, for having me, and thanks to everyone else for putting up with me for a few minutes. I understand Wendy is at a protest rally, or so. She's at a Fight Asian Hate rally or something like that. So I'm sorry we missed her, but she's fighting the good fight. For those who don't know me, I see a couple of familiar faces. My name is Rob McKay. I work for the Queens Economic Development Corporation, and in that my job description, I run the Queens Tourism Council, basically I've written a book with Arcadia Publishing, which is they have the sepia covers. You might see them. They do a lot of history books all over, covering all over the country, and small towns, historic trends, stuff like that. This one is a labor of love. I'm also on the board of the Queens Historical Society, so I'm interested in history and very interested, of course, in this borough, which I love. And basically, I came up with the idea to write it when February or March 2 years ago, when COVID was here to stay. I pitched it to them and said, could I write about all the wonderful things about Queens, thinking that I'd write about it during the hibernation, and then COVID would end, the book would come out, people would have all this energy, they read the book, they go to Queens places and spend money and all that kind of stuff. And Arcadia told me that they have a formula, which is it has to be all historic photos, it has to be all historic things, and I couldn't write about theaters and stuff, but I could write about historic houses that are still museums. And there's 180 photo minimum. So I accepted and set out to do that. And so this book, which published on May 10th, actually has 200 photos. Most of them are historic. Some of them are modern day photos that I snuck in, which are of historic houses all around the borough. I have, starting from the 1600s, we come straight up until the modern era. I have pretty much houses that are all around every single neighborhood in the borough. All told, there are probably 50 historic houses, and then there are a couple of historic districts that are in there. So that doesn't really count as one house because there are actually a lot in there, but we'll just say 50 to 55 historic houses or historic districts. As you would expect in a place like Queens, the Dutch, there are Dutch colonials, and then there are English colonials, and then there are German colonials, and then there are Italian, and then there's planned communities, and then there's all that, row houses and all that kind of stuff. So it's all in there. And basically it tells the story of historic houses in Queens through photos and long captions. That's their style. That's the formula. That's how Arcadia Publishing does it. Just to let you know, Arcadia has published about 20 books on Queens, all told, including their bestseller, which is actually the history of Shea Stadium. I don't know why, but for some reason, that's their bestseller of all the books that they've done. So that's about the story, and that's what you get. Alex and I have a slide presentation. I'm going to go quickly because I know that your time is valuable. But Alex, how do we set up the?
I have to make you the co-host. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Or
Okay.
if people, is there just a way so that they can see it? I'll just talk about a couple of the houses.
Your co-host. You can show it. Go ahead. You can share your screen.
Share my screen.
Yep. You want to do that?
So I press desktop or application.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it. So let me see if I can get that presentation for you. Hold on 1 second. 1 second.
Okay. What it says multiple participants.
No.
Share.
Okay. Don't you worry. Oh. Don't you worry. Let me get it for you. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
There we go. Okay, so there it is. So that is the photo that's on the cover, and you are looking at a mansion, but where that mansion was is basically Terminal A in LaGuardia. So you fly if you ever fly in on Terminal A in LaGuardia, you're flying over that historical site. That is known as the Riker Mansion. It burned down in the 1920s, and then Robert Moses took the land when he created LaGuardia through eminent domain. The interesting thing about that is, and part of the reason why it's on the cover, is because if you go about 150 yards to the west, there's something called Riker's household. Not letting me go down. Can you go down to the next photo? It's not letting me do this for some reason. There it goes. Okay.
I'm controlling it, so you just tell me when you want to change.
Oh, okay. So that is the Lent Riker Smith homestead. That the Rikers, which I'm sure sounds familiar because of Rikers Island. The Rikers, a man named Abraham Riker, came over from Holland in the 1600s. He came over from a town called Lent, which is why it's called the Lent Riker Smith homestead. That house that you're seeing right there still exists, and it was built in the 1650s. And it is right next to the causeway to Rikers Island. Basically, the Rikers family owned. Peter Stuyvesant, the governor at the time, gave them land, but which included both the island and the area in East Elmhurst, where it is right now. And they would go back and forth to their farm to the island via canoe. And that house that you see right there is the oldest house in all of New York City that is still a private dwelling, which is to say there are some houses that are older, but they've been either destroyed or they've been turned into museums. An actual woman still lives there. The other kind of interesting thing is that Riker's family members basically lived there from the 1600s until the early 1900s. And they, so there have only been 3 families that have owned that house in the whole time. Can we go down one more? That is the indoor of the house. It's called a keeping room. When they first built the house, that's all they had was just that one room. And they had a fire there, and they would actually sleep in the same place as the fire to keep warm during the winter and all that. And it's still there. You can still visit. There's a 82-year-old woman who lives there. She loves to give tours, but that's the original house right there, built in the 1600s, and from then they expanded on it. So now it has a lot of property. It also has a graveyard where where about 130 people are buried there. Most of them have the last name Riker. One of them died in the Valley Forge in the American Revolution. It's written on the tombstone. The woman that lives there has in her will that when she dies, she'll be buried there too before the house goes away. Can we go one more down? And that's what it looks like right now. If you were to go there right now, it's in East Elmhurst. It's right near, it's got LaGuardia on one side and the causeway to Rikers on the other. And then the rest is just sort of kind of typical Queens row houses. you know, the sort of suburban Queens row houses with recessed driveways. But then all of a sudden you'll come across this house with a little property in the graveyard. It's called the Lent Riker Homestead. Can we go next one quickly? I'll do this quickly. That right there, people don't know this, but Malcolm X lived in East Elmhurst. And there is a picture. He was in a battle when he ran the mosque when he was in the Nation of Islam. He ran the Harlem Mosque, and while he ran the Harlem Mosque, he lived right there in Elmhurst. In fact, 4 of his children were born while he lived there. And when he was breaking away, there was a fight between who owned it, him or the Nation of Islam. And they one morning they firebombed the place, and that's an actual photo right after the firebombing happened. And then he was assassinated a couple days after that that photo, that attack right there. Can we go down? That's what it looks like right now. It's seafoam green. There's nothing there. It's not historical. People live there. I've met them a couple times. They haven't done any historical stuff, at least not yet. But you can still visit that in East Elmhurst. Can we go down again? Okay, that's Louis Armstrong's house, which is in Corona. As you might know, yeah, keep on going. Can you go one further? Okay, there's Louis Armstrong. So if anybody knows the song, What a Wonderful World, Louis lived in Corona with his 4th wife. And he traveled so much that he absolutely cherished the time that he had in the house, especially hanging out on the stoop with his wife, where he would meet all the kids in the neighborhood and talk to them. And if everyone knows the song "What a Wonderful World," that was he didn't write it, but it was actually written for someone else. And he wanted to sing it because it reminded him of sitting on his stoop in Corona and watching the children grow. They know more than he'll ever know, but that's him right there. And to the other side, I included that photo in there because Louis had a rough childhood, and he ate horrible food as a child. For a while he was played at a wayward house. A house for wayward boys, as they called it back then. And he had real bad intestinal problems. And so when he got money, he made himself the nicest bathroom that money could buy. And the sink you see there is imported. It was a bird bath in France. He had a stereo in there for the 1950s, which is really high end. You can see all the other furnishings, the gold, all that kind of stuff. Can we please go on to the next one? Okay, that is the Bound House. It's still there in Flushing. You can visit it. That picture was taken, as you can see right there, it was taken in 1903. That house is the oldest house, the oldest domicile in Queens, but no one lives in it. So the one I talked about earlier, the Riker house, is the oldest house that someone lives in. This was where the Bound family lived. They actually lived from this, as it says right there, 1661 is when the house was built. They lived there in like 7 or 8 generations of Bounds lived there. So they didn't leave until the early 1920s. You can still visit this. It's on Bound Street, believe it or not, in Flushing, where you see that car. Right next to that car is now a park, and then on the other side of the park there's the Kingsland Homestead, another historical house where the Queens Historical Society is actually located. The Bound House is very significant for a couple of reasons. First of all, they were Quakers, and Flushing was a Quaker community. They were ardent anti-slavery activists, and that was the final stop on the Underground Railroad. If you go in there right now, there's a place where they used to hide escaped slaves from bounty hunters and others. And it's also where the Flushing Remonstrance was written. And while the meetings for the Flushing Remonstrance all took place, If you don't know what the Flushing Remonstrance was, when Peter Stuyvesant ran New York City, he really wasn't a mayor. He was more like a branch manager of the Dutch West Indies Company. He only allowed the Dutch Reformed religion to be. It was the only religion allowed to be practiced at the time. And Quakers, like the ones in Flushing, would actually walk through the woods and just pretend to be walking through the woods when they were having their Quaker meetings. But finally, a bunch of activists got together and signed something called the Flushing Remonstrance, which demanded freedom of religion back. This is in the 1600s, and Bound got in trouble. He was actually sent into exile in Europe, but then he came back, and the Dutch West Indies Company demanded Peter Stuyvesant to allow the free practice of religion, and in New York, and many people consider it to be the precursor or the model for the Bill of Rights, where we have the freedom of religion in the First Amendment. You can still visit that; it's still there. Next one, please. Tell me if we have a problem with time. Let me know.
Yeah, I would say wrap it up in about a minute or two.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Okay,
a little rushed.
that's the Friends Meeting House. That's also on Northern Boulevard in Flushing. It was actually built on land donated by Bound. Can we just keep on going? I'll go quickly. What you're looking at right now is where the U-Haul, if you know off Flushing River in College Point Boulevard, if you drive by there, you can see that U-Haul factory. That was once Willow Bank, and it was the Lawrence family. The Lawrence family was a very prominent family that owned land all over. In fact, the town of Lawrence, Long Island is them. They had that beautiful mansion, which of course is gone. Quickly, next one. Okay, Conrad Poppenhusen. He came over from Hamburg, Germany, made tons of money making rubber parts, basically. He had a factory in what's now College Point, and he built that mansion, but he also, with all of his money, College Point was just farmland, and he paid for everything. He paid for the electricity, the water, he paved the streets, he forced the city to build a Long Island Railroad stop there, and he built all of these houses. And so College Point was basically a company town where all of the immigrants, who were mostly German, worked at the factory that Poppenhusen owned and lived in his town. Quickly, if we can do the next one, that is the Castle. It's in Fort Totten. It was built. Fort Totten was an army base. It's in Bayside. It's northeastern Queens. The Bayside Historical Society is still built in there. It still maintains that property. It was originally an officers' mess club where officers in the Army. This goes back to the Civil War and a lot of the other wars. They used to eat there. Now it's converted into a historical society. Can we go two more? Just go down two more. I want to do two more, and then not that one, but the next one. All right, so the next one, to the right, the photo on the right is where Ella Fitzgerald lived, and to the left is where James Brown lived. When James Brown lived there, he actually had a moat and a bridge that went over it, and he had a wall there with JB in gold. This neighborhood is called Addisley Park. And it was also from about the 1930s, 1940s on, it was known as Black Hollywood East because so many prominent African-American entertainers lived there. It's a historical district right next to St. Albans in Southeast Queens. Beautiful houses. There you can see Ella Fitzgerald and James Brown, but other people like Jackie Robinson, who played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, lived there. Count Basie lived there. W.E.B. Du Bois, the sort of author, scholar, civil rights activist, lived there. Roy Campanella, if you're a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, he was the catcher on on all those teams that Jackie Robinson played on. Other people like John Coltrane, Billie Holiday. If you know Illinois Jacket, depends on how much you know jazz, all lived there as well. Fats Waller, who wrote Ain't Misbehavin', he lived there. Brooke Benton and a couple of boxers, including Joe Louis, lived there. And that's another wonderful place. Because of time, I will go. I see questions in the chat. I am happy to answer any questions. I can go on. Just if you go to the next, can you just go to the next page? I'll just quickly do the next one just to show the house. Okay, on the left, that's Jackie Robinson's house. This is important to me because my father and grandfather were huge Brooklyn Dodgers fans. But that's where Jackie Robinson lived. And to the right in St. Albans, there's a mural that depicts all the people who lived in the neighborhood. The people that you're seeing right there, I think that's Illinois Jacket, and then Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, I think, are the ones coming down. Lena Horne lived there, et cetera, et cetera. That's it. I thank you all for your time. This book, if you like I said, it's got 200 photos. And it covers the entire borough. You can get it via Arcadia Publishing. Plus it's in some of the local bookstores. It was a labor of love because finding the photos was really hard with archives. But I'm fascinated by this, so it was all great. I guess that's it. You could find it by Googling my name and Arcadia Publishing, or go to the Arcadia Publishing website or something. Probably if you just did Historic Houses of Queens, you would get it. So that's it. I thank you very much for your time. And I'm sorry I could go on forever with this. But if there are any questions, I'm here, and then we can go back to our workday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rob.
Great
Thank you.
presentation. Well, it's mesmerizing. The history is always mesmerizing, to me at least. Bound House, the oldest house you mentioned, Robert. You said nobody lives in it. Is it maintained well? Is it a museum?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a museum. It's a museum, and it has it does a lot of kids groups, school groups, but it also has hours, and they have a tour guide who's there. And they organize events and other stuff. They have an event on June 27th. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Also, for Flushing, just in that area, there are about 6 historic houses all from different generations, different centuries, which is kind of interesting. And then Bound House, if you go further down Bound House, there's the Hindu temple, which is the oldest Hindu temple in the United States. It dates to the 1970s, but it's the oldest Hindu temple in the United States. So it's kind of a landmark too, if you ask me.
That's the Ganesh Temple. No, it's wonderful.
It's called NY Ganesh Temple. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Rob, you let me know if I can share this presentation with the group. If not,
please do.
Okay.
Do.
All right.
Yeah.
So I will send that to the group, and we'll have you back to continue the tour, and maybe even a live tour, live from wherever.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm happy to do any tours or anything like that. This is my pleasure and my passion. In another 400 years, so I cover houses going back 400 years, and in 400 years, I plan to write my next book. So maybe we can have another meeting here.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, folks, I put a link in there. If you would take a moment to just answer the question, rate the group. Like I said at the beginning, we're going to be making a few changes over the next couple of weeks, adding some breakout rooms for a little bit more one-on-one networking during the group. We're going to do some live from a destination meetings that might include you, Rob, with your camera, taking a tour on the street.
All right.
And I want to thank you all again for joining us and taking some time. Let me see. David, I promised you, David is, I think you're in Israel, are you not? Just quickly give an introduction and then we'll sign off.
I'll be real brief. I was invited about a month ago by Joseni. I know her from another group, and I was also Nancy and Jerry. I've been joining networking groups for the past few months. I grew up in New York and New Jersey, live now in Israel for about 14 years, and I have a business about 20 years in helping people self-publish. But I've been networking for another role I started about a year ago, connecting people with unique products and services, kind of like headhunting, but not for jobs, for whether alternative investments or alternative health or other things, technology, cybersecurity.
Thank you.
Other things.
Stay safe.
Thanks so much. I'm enjoying the group.
Thank you all.
Alex, can I just jump in quick?
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, I'll be MIA for the next 2 weeks, so you won't hear this from me. But I just wanted to share.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. The August 2nd date. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So the JFK Rotary Club will be hosting our annual Ladies Golf Outing. It will be on August 2nd. Men are welcome for cocktails and dinner, but this is, yes, we want the men there too. But I am not a golfer. However, I will be golfing. And it is because of the JFK community that I golf today. Not a great player, but have tons of fun. So if you're interested in networking with the airport community, this is a great networking opportunity. Alex was very generous to share that with you all. He sent an email out. There is a link there, all the information, there's sponsorship opportunities, and there's all kinds of great things happening. So I welcome you. I will be there, and it will be under my presidency. I will be the president of the club. I'm the incoming president on July 1st. So I'm really excited, would love your support. Thank you so very much, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Alex, could I say one thing?
Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Okay, quickly. I'm on the board of the Bayside Historical Society, and the castle will be opening up shortly for visitors. Please come see us. It's absolutely beautiful.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you. Well, you come back too, Pat. All right. Thank you
that's
very
right.
much,
Okay.
all. We'll see you next week. We have a cybersecurity expert speaking next week. Thank you.
Good.